PAP students have been deregistered on account of exam irregularities since the KCSE theory exam began last week. Education Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohammed, visiting a cross-section of schools in Garissa County, says that this is a great improvement in maintaining that the majority of the candidates writing the national exams have had a clean performance. The CS hailed the stakeholders, saying that the 5 is a drop in the ocean, owing to the fact that more than 664,000 students are registered in this year's KCSE exams. She has, however, given her commitment to maintain standards that will inform future examinations. Amina has congratulated the schools in Garissa County in their efforts to promoting education, citing a great improvement in the registered numbers.
In every examination center. This was meant to read out any form of impersonation that we detected last week, in which non-students, including university students, were being used to write exams on behalf of other candidates. The aim is to ensure schools stand in better grades for individual students in addition to the overall mean scores of the affected schools.
And ODM leader Raila Odinga has pledged his support for the 2/3 gender bill set to be brought before the National Assembly next week. The ODM leader told the Kenya Women Parliamentarians Association, KEWOPA, which had paid him a visit in the company of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs Cabinet Secretary Professor Margaret Kobia, that he would unequivocally support the bill. Raila is asking National Assembly members to back their female counterparts in making the bill law. The women leaders expressed concerns that the Punguza Mzigo campaign for constitutional amendments targets women seats. National Assembly Majority Leader Eden Duale is expected to table the bill a second time next Tuesday.
I keep on asking my friends here, women MP, who is the biggest roadblock, and it is the members of parliament who are men. So what do we need to do with your help so that they don't start seeing it like women affair, and then now they are men, so it's like kind of defensive. So if there is a solution towards that direction, I think we will be willing to go and do what it takes.
My support can be taken for granted. And I will also talk to our people. Maybe we'll call a PG. So that we can drum up support and get members to turn up in numbers.
Right, we want to buckle down to a discussion this morning. You're watching the Leadership Forum, and of course today we want to talk about the prize of integrity. We have our panelists already in studio. We shall hear from them, and of course to set as a segue the discussion, we shall have a snippet of what they have prepared for us this morning when they will walk over to the podium to give us also the speeches this morning. Also remember, you get to drive the show with me. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20505 is our SMS portal. Now when it comes to integrity, what really comes to your mind, or which particular person can you associate with integrity, right? We know Billy Graham, who passed, of course, recently, and many people in the world continued to, of course, give glowing tributes to Billy Graham as a man who walked the talk, a man who kept, of course, his character intact over the years, a man who people attribute to say is a person that, yes, has the character and, of course, the virtues that people espouses and they want in a leader. But when it comes, of course, to Kenya and across Africa, whom can we pick as a person that we can truly say is a person who has paid the price of integrity? In a nation where people have vowed never to, of course, resign, when accusations of corruptions are hanging over them ominously, then it seems we have a wide berth of, or a dearth of leaders that can truly say that these are people who are leaders of integrity. We want to hear from our panelists this morning, but what is the prize of integrity, and what do we really mean when we say the prize of integrity? We have with us this morning, if you joined us at the top of the hour, I had introduced him earlier, this is Sam Hochi, who is Executive Director of International Commission of Jurists. Also, we do have with us Dr. Caesar Mwangi, who is Executive Director of Center for Personal Leadership and a visiting lecturer at Strathmore University. Also, we do have with us Dr. Malongiza from, of course, kindly, this is Pan-African Christian University.
Dr. Edward Nzinga.
Yes, Nzinga. Edward Nzinga. Sorry, I've confused with the man. I always confuse that.
Yes.
But sorry, yes?
Pan-African Christian University.
Yeah, Pan-African Christian University is here with us, of course. And of course, we do have with us this morning also Tufosa Kwaka. She is a principal at St. Paul's University. This is Nairobi campus. Let's just dive in, and of course, we get to hear from you guys, just to act as a segue for this particular discussion this morning. When you talk about the prize of integrity, Sam, what do we really mean?
You know, we as a nation have to trace our national psyche and spirit, and you can only go back to the Constitution 2010. This is a collective document that had investments by a significant number of Kenyans. It defines what we aspire as a nation. It goes deeper to look at what we aspire as good virtues and norms for leadership. And I think significantly Kenyans do identify with high integrity and honesty. However, unfortunately and rightfully observing, the practice is to the contrary, because you would reckon that amongst the unique constitutions in this world, the Kenyan constitution actually mentions the word corruption 17 times. And that in itself tells you there's a problem, because corruption is one of the predicates, negative predicates of want of integrity. And the effects of this is such that you find that provision of public goods and services are compromised.
Yes.
You discover we have a significant, huge segment of society, the youth, that are deprived of opportunities, including employment opportunities. Huge numbers, in excess of 100,000 jobs are lost due to corruption in this country. The state cannot provide for its most vulnerable. And the wholesome effect of this is manufactured poverty, thereby thrusting us into this vicious circle where you have a state that cannot fully provide for its people, and you have a national culture where you believe that you either have mtu wetu, or you must have to know somebody for you to be rendered public services.
Thank you.
I think that, to me, sums it all. It's a huge problem, and I think we have to consider, is it that the text of the Constitution is different from what we think as a people? Because we have seen more and more the celebration of the hustler culture. We've been witnessing heightened activities around examination of children, where you have now heavily armed police officers seeking to ensure that these children do not steal the exams. And that permeates, and it permeates all the way across the Kenyan society.
Yes.
It's unfortunate to see the level of deployment that is being done by the Ministry of Education and the Interior Ministry.
Thank you.
In that direction.
Right, let's hear from, of course, Dr. Caesar Mwangi as well. Good morning.
Good morning, Debarl.
Yes.
Good morning, my fellow panelists. The price of integrity, I think my colleague has actually mentioned some of the issues which I think are very clear. And I just want to mention that I think the biggest problem we have is the lack of integrity. So I think we should be talking about the price of the lack of integrity, which is, I think, one of the biggest prices we are paying as a nation. And he has very eloquently mentioned those problems that we have.
Yes.
And just to talk about the very current issue of examinations, it is absolutely ridiculous when we spend billions of shillings to guard our children to ensure they do not steal exams. And this is where we have failure at that level of children. then we have a big problem. And I just want to maybe just summarize by saying, many years ago, I remember Tony Blair, the Prime Minister of the UK, set up a ministry for the family. And he was asked, why do you keep talking about the family and you even want to set up policies and government resources spent on the family? He said, it is because I do not have enough policemen to guard all the people. And I think we have had a failure at the family level to begin with. And that's why we're seeing some of the things happening even before we go to national leadership and corporate leadership, etc. So we have a problem, but definitely we need to address it.
Right. Let's hear from Dr. Nzinga.
Well, thank you so much, Debarl and colleagues, and good morning, Kenyans.
Good morning.
I would start by saying the issue of integrity is easier discussed than done. It's like those things that people can really talk, or it's the projects you can really come up with. But when it comes to implementation,
yes,
you realize that this thing is not as easy as I thought. There are about 7 words that describe the integrity. Justice, fairness, authenticity, self-sacrifice, truth, boldness, and courage. And none of those things is easy, because right from the 1st century,
yes,
and allow me just to quote the Bible, you know, the day that Jesus, the Son of God, who is actually God,
yes,
he met this young lawyer and he says, calling him good teacher. And Jesus is saying, no, I'm not good. It's only God who is good. So integrity is something that is even beyond the Constitution. It is something that needs divine intervention. It's something that needs a human being to surrender themselves to God and say, God, I know this is true, but I need your power. I need your strength. I need your enablement. I need to do what you require. So I'm not of the opinion, and without fear of contradiction, that perhaps as we strive towards integrity, Kenyans should turn to God and begin to say, where have we gone wrong? Because he's the only one who can allow us to be truly men and women of integrity. And it's a process. It's just like salvation, which starts with justification and sanctification, and the final stage is glorification.
Fantastic.
And I was touched when people spoke about the late Archbishop Njenga, that one day he actually lost a flight because the police could not actually release his driver, and the same driver was taken to court and he was fined 500 shillings, and the process had started morning till evening, up to the PPO, the then Mombasa PPO. So I think that is, it took God, and now that the man of God is gone, I think those are lessons we need to begin to ask. What was in this man that made him do that?
Thank you. Right, let's hear from Tufosa.
Good morning. First of all, when we look at that phrase, the price of integrity, I want to look at the word price and integrity. Price suggests worth or value. Therefore, when we're talking about the price of integrity, we're asking ourselves, what is this value? And for me, the question that comes sometimes to my mind when I think about our nation is, who bewitched us? Because why is it that we're not willing to pay the price for a good thing? It's like when you go to buy a shoe, for example. Assuming that you have money to buy whatever shoe you can buy, I would imagine that you would want to go for a shoe, not just because it is highly priced, but because it is a good shoe and it will serve you it will serve you well and for a very long time. The word integrity comes from the word integer in maths, which means whole, which therefore suggests, and when we apply it in leadership, and in the way we use the word, it suggests wholeness, meaning how we talk, how we walk. In other words, there's no disparity between the word and our actions. Therefore, I would therefore also want to add there that the fact that we have a chapter of integrity in our constitution doesn't make us a nation of integrity.
Yes.
It needs us to be willing to pay the price, to be willing to choose a high value for a high return, and to be whole not only in what we say but also in what we do. So the question therefore that I end up asking myself, Debarl, is who bewitched us?
Who bewitched us? A good question. This is what Paul was saying. Oh, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? So, of course, you're posing that question to Kenyans as well. Who has bewitched us? A good question. Thank you very much. And, of course, we shall hear more from you from the lectern. I just wanted to set the ground rules for our discussion this morning, even as you're walking to the lectern to give us some of the prepared speeches that you have this morning. We have a red card, we have a yellow card, this is for the sake of keeping time and the bell as well. I'll give each of you 5 minutes to just deliver your speeches and what you think about the prize of integrity. And remember also, you're tethered to, of course, the mics here. So this is the line mic. We have another one on the lectern, so kindly just remove it, place it at the back of your seat as you walk over to the lectern to just deliver this. And since now we had some who came in fast this morning, he'll be the first maybe to walk over now to the lectern over there and of course deliver for us. He's the Executive Director of International Commission of Jurists, and of course opening the show with us, he has talked about Chapter 6 of the Constitution, where we have leadership and integrity being, of course, espoused there, that there's some tenets that we need to observe as far as that chapter is concerned. But along the way, do we really, of course, make sure that this particular chapter is shaken into place, right? I'm eagerly waiting for you to walk over there. I'm just trying to ad-lib so that now I can give myself much time so that you can be ready as well. To shake this particular chapter into place, we've seen when people are going through vetting, Chapter 6 has not been adequately observed. So we have Sam Mohochi, who's on the lectern right now, and he'll be speaking to Kenyans this morning. Sam, you've got 5 minutes beginning now.
Thank you. I think when we look at the price of integrity, we look at it from a collective position as members of Kenya as a nation. And we have had extreme challenges. A significant number of our people have continued wallowing in poverty. A huge segment of society continues struggling on a daily basis because of lack of the enabling infrastructure and framework for them to achieve their desired vision and goals. And these we have managed to compromise at various levels. You look at procurement of goods and public services is usually a hotly contested issue.
So, Mr. Martin, just kindly adjust your mic so that it is facing you upwards. Yeah, thank you.
It's usually a hotly contested issue. We've looked at revenue collection and wanton wastage of public resources. At policy level, we've seen instances where we end up setting up policies that do not ensure that we get value for money for projects that we invest in as a nation. And the wholesome game is that we have this ballooning public debt that continues ensuring that we will never achieve some of our aspirations. For example, I'll talk about Vision 2030. Vision 2030 presupposes that you have consistent economic growth in excess of 10%. We have fell short of this target consistently for the last 5 years. And it does not appear feasible that the vision of 2030 will be achievable by this nation. We have huge number of our people who graduate from institutions of higher learning who are not assured of any job, which translates to a waste. My colleagues had already mentioned the fact that examinations that we have nowadays, the pressure is on the students to post the A grades. At times there is suspicion of support by parents, which now goes back to the family setting and what runs in our minds. I think for us to look at the price of integrity, we have to critically examine ourselves and make certain demands. The framework, the legal framework provided is not only sufficient, but addresses some of these concerns. For example, when you talk about conflict of interest, why is it that today in this country we still remain with recommendations by Ndegwa in the 70s, which ushered in an era of public servants trading with their employer? And we know very well that the demands and the pressures to ascend to public service or state office at times is influenced by the returns, lucrative returns that our leaders end up securing from such appointments. I think we need to be bold enough. The head of state has already expressed his desire to address some of these issues. And I think when we look at the quality of leaders, both elected and appointed, at times it leaves a lot to be desired. So my humble submission is that we have failed ourselves. We have failed to hold to account our leaders. We have a significant number of leaders facing criminal offenses at various levels, from the MCA level going upwards. Criminal cases, some of them extremely serious, and we still see these individuals holding office. My personal view is that these individuals have already brought disrepute to the offices they hold, and they should do what is honorable and right and step aside and resign from those positions until absolved. One cannot continue hiding under the sheath of presumption of innocence, still proven guilty. I think we have higher expectations of our leaders, and as such, personally as a lawyer, I would expect these individuals to step aside because they have already brought disrepute to the offices they represent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, thank you. He says that we should critically examine ourselves and make certain demands. We failed ourselves. We need also to hold these leaders to our account. And this is all about the price of integrity. The rest of course, the salient points that I've picked from Sam Hochi's, of course, delivery this morning. We shall be discussing this much later in the course of the program. But have you picked a copy of the Daily Nation this morning? Right, we're talking about the price of integrity, right? And this is what will cost you when people are not really held account, or when, of course, we continue to let integrity slip away. This is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Your security, right? Police will be bribed for measly or 2,000 shillings to compromise your security, and this is what it is being revealed by the IUN report. Bribe police let in Shabab bombers, and it says that a suicide troop on a mission to attack Nairobi city center was allowed to cross in and out of Somalia 5 times in 3 months, according to the UN in a new report. This story is on page 4 of the Daily Nation today. So no matter how long that wall, or that, of course, the height of that wall will be, if we have tight security measures but we have compromised officers, of course the security will be compromised. It reminds me of the Great Wall of China, which it runs, of course, around 21 million meters, right? But somebody managed to actually just pass through that or get through the Wall of China because they compromised the Getman. And this is the price of integrity, right? Do we have people who can actually refuse to take bribery because they have values they espouse? And what are those values? This is what we're talking this morning. We'll continue with the discussion on the other side of the break. Don't go away. When we circle back, we shall hear more from our panelists on the price of integrity. Remember also, you can chime in, as always. Head over to our Twitter handle, and of course, you can share your contribution or ask questions as well. We take a short break right now. person. They said he was a man of character and integrity. He finished well in life and left a legacy which will remain for generations to come. However, it is important to remember that this legacy today is based on decisions Mr. Graham made several decades ago, and the price he paid to be a man of integrity for nearly a century. What price? The question will be, are you paying today to ensure you keep your integrity, extend your influence, excuse me, and finish well? Do you want to finish strong and finish well, as Billy Graham did? He had also some permutations that he had kept in place to make sure that his character remains intact. Him as an evangelist, a pastor, and the American, of course, pastor, he observed some tenets on how also he paid the price for that particular prize for him to be a man of integrity and remain to be a man of integrity. This is what we're discussing this morning, and we want to hear from you as well. Hit us on Twitter. AM Live and TV is a Twitter handle. AM Live and TV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20686 our SMS portal. Right, we've heard from Samuel Hochi, who is the Executive Director of International Commission of Jurists. Now, up on the lectern, we have Dr. Caesar Mwangi, who is the Executive Director of Center for Personal Leadership. And of course, we want to hear his sentiment also about the prize of integrity. What is the prize of integrity? Caesar, you got 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Kenyans. Good morning, my fellow panelists. The question of integrity. In fact, I just want to start by saying that this morning I'm very disturbed after hearing the overview of the news this morning. Very disturbed, as I am often disturbed when I read the newspapers every day. But let me just mention a few of the cases that I heard. The case of the bribed police who let in Shabab bombers. That was a failure of integrity. And there were individuals, persons, men and women like you and me, who made a decision to take some money to let in terrorists into the country. We all know the result of that, and people have lost lives, etc., etc. I do not want to go into that. There was an issue of integrity there. We also heard there was a report about beware of your chicken, pork, or beef, all the meats that I love. I'm now being told to be aware of them. I'm very disturbed. Because can I trust the producers of food in this country if all they're looking for is some money to fatten their animals, and by fattening them with antibiotics, we risk our lives as consumers? A question of integrity right there. Another report that I heard was hospitals run out of kit to test TB. Tuberculosis, a disease that can be controlled if the tests are done properly, but we don't have the kits. Somebody is responsible for ensuring those kits are in stock in public hospitals. It's again a question of integrity. Somebody is not doing their work. The sugar imports, we all know about the market in the sugar, etc., and the collapsed sugar industry. There's a question of integrity, and there are people involved who made decisions that have jeopardized the lives of thousands of Kenyans, in the health point of view and in the livelihoods point of view, in the sugar belt, where people are now languishing in poverty because their sugar cannot be bought. And there was a very personal one where an infant was rescued from a latrine, and the infant was dumped there by the mother. Again, a question of integrity. So I hope you understand why I am disturbed. And there must be something wrong with us, my dear Kenyans, if we are not disturbed by this trend. And that is why this question of integrity is so important to all of us to discuss. And integrity, I just want to say, is about our convictions as individuals. What are our personal convictions about what is right and what is wrong? And in an environment where there is so little integrity, your personal convictions, you will have to defend them at great cost. At great cost. I mention that, at great cost, because just as Wangari Maathai, who we all know, the late Wangari Maathai, believed that the environment has got to be sustained, has got to be taken care of. In an environment which had very little integrity, she had to with her convictions, she paid a price, a personal price, great sacrifice. She was whipped, she was harassed, she bled because of what she believed was right. That was her conviction. And we, all of us as Kenyans, at a very personal level, And I like to talk about a personal level, each and every one of us, without blaming others, without thinking of others first. Let us start with ourselves. So defend your convictions in the face of great social pressure, but you've got to be clear about your convictions, what is right. Integrity is very personal. Integrity is a strong sense of ethical and moral values to live by. And when we are clear about how we need to live, we will live right, we will live well, and we shall live with integrity, just like Billy Graham. As we've been told, he was a man of integrity. Integrity is also key to leadership. Without integrity in leadership, we are doomed. We cannot grow as a nation, and my good friend here has mentioned that very well, clearly. I want to just quote a gentleman who I have a great respect for. His name is Peter Drucker. He said, "It is character through which leadership is exercised." Character through which leadership is exercised. He also said, another one, Mr. Warren Bennis also said, that leadership is not a superficial question of style, but has to do with who we are as human beings. The process of becoming a leader is the same as the process of becoming an integrated human being. A person of integrity. It's a process, and we have to push and take ourselves through that process. We strengthen our character through the practice of sound moral habits. We talk about character, but what is character? It is a practice of sound moral habits, habitual practice as a habit. When I mention these cases of lack of integrity in this country, it has become a habit to have lack of integrity in our country. It is a tragedy, a tragic tragedy. And that is why we're having so many problems right now. But if we practice sound moral habits, then we shall be men and women of integrity. And I must say that we have wonderful examples. I think my good friend here mentioned the late Archbishop John Jenga. May his soul rest in peace. He was buried this week. He was a man of great integrity, and everyone who attended that funeral or heard the eulogies, it was very clear he was a man of great character, serving this nation. He set up almost 40 schools. He helped so many people. And my dear friends, we have hope because we have examples, personal examples, and we need to start with ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Cesar Mwangi there. What is your personal conviction on what is right and wrong? He asked that particular pertinent question, right? Defend your convictions in the face of pressure. And of course, that is a given. You will have pressure in the face of your convictions and the people who really want you to compromise your conviction. Integrity, he says, the key to leadership. And he's quoted Peter Drucker there, the management guru. He says that it is character through which leadership is exercised. It is character through which leadership is exercised. Right. We want to hear now from Tufosa Kwakasumba, who is the principal of St. Paul's University Nairobi campus, and she's going to talk to us as well and tell us more about what she thinks the prize of integrity is all about. Of course, we had from her beginning saying, of course, that particular word integrity comes from the word inters, which means whole. And of course, we know if it is not whole, it's a fraction. So are you a whole person or you're a fraction of yourself? Who are you? Professor, you've got 5 minutes beginning now.
I want to start with a story, and this is a true story now, about this man known as James Hall Richter, and he was an systems auditor. And he brought to his supervisors the attention about certain mismanagement that was going on in the organization. And therefore, as an auditor, he was carrying out his role. What he did not know is that once he did that, he crossed a certain line that threatened the very existence of that organization. And what went on after that, it was that eventually he lost his job, he lost his income, he lost his home. Together with his family, they actually ended up living on the streets. And this is a true story in the US. He could not find another job because the whole industry rejected him. This happened in the 1980s. He ended up cleaning toilets and selling newspapers in order to make a living. 17 or 20 years later, he was found to have been dismissed unlawfully and that he had proven a right case, and he was awarded $134 million US. And when he was asked what kept him going, because that was very tough, first of all, and just again, some of the other things that happened was that there was an attempt on his life and on his children's life. we could say that James actually paid the price of integrity. He paid it not only with money, but he paid it with his very life. And he was asked, what is it that keeps you going? And he said, it is what my father once told me. When is it ever wrong to do the right thing? And when we are thinking about the price of integrity, I then have to think about it, and I was thinking about James. I think about it at 3 levels. Number 1, there is a personal level. It is very, very personal. And the other panelists, Sam and Caesar, have talked about it. It is at a personal level. It starts with me. At St. Paul's, we say integrity starts with me. It's not about the other person. And so as a person, you've got to ask yourself, what is this thing about me? What is my core value? This core value should be the one thing you're not willing to sell at any cost. Therefore, it will require a certain level of self-discipline to ensure that my core, my value of what I believe in and what I stand for cannot be compromised at any cost. It will cost you something, but that is the cost and that's the price you should be willing to pay. Because ultimately for leaders, we lead out of who we are. So I cannot say that just because, for example, we have a chapter on integrity, that therefore I am a man or a woman of integrity. It comes from who I am inside. The second level I want to look at is a team. When you're leading a team, a lot of the times, it's about the relationships you maintain within that team. Therefore, to be a leader of integrity, you have to look at yourself and say, these relationships have to be maintained above board. And that will be the price. You'll be able to say, I am not willing to compromise any of those relationships for the sake of the team that I lead. So the principle of above board relationships becomes very important. Let's look at the organizations, and we could escalate that to nations even. Collins and Porras, who've written very good books and done research on organizations, one of their books, Built to Last, talks about the principle of clock building, not time telling. In other words, when you're leading an organization, the price of integrity is that one that you say, we are here for the long haul. The reason we remember Evangelist Billy Graham is that he made decisions long time ago, and that now he's able to reap, although he's resting, because he paid the price for the long haul. So he wasn't looking at the time, how much money or what is it need for me now, but he was looking at it in terms of the years to come, the generations to come. And I think that those are the questions that we need to ask, that for organizations, the price of integrity would be that ensures that our organizations are built to last. So I want to finish with the quote that James's father left for him. When is it ever wrong to do the right thing? Let's be willing to pay the price of integrity at a personal level, at a team level, and at organizational and national level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Forza Quackers over there. We really do appreciate it. Of course, that pertinent question is when is it wrong to do the right thing? Right? And she says that integrity starts with me. And that's a principle also at St. Paul's University. What are your core values? Right? What do you really stand for? What are you really known for? Those are pertinent questions as well. Of course, also very interesting quote there from Jim Collins, principle of clock building and not time telling. That is a good principle as well. Are you paying the price for the long haul? Or are you just navel-gazing, looking here and now? Those are pertinent questions. And we want to hear now from Dr. Edward Nzinga, who is a senior lecturer and director at Valley Road Campus, Pan-African Christian University. Please kindly be walking to the lectern as we introduced this morning. Of course, he's going to also talk to us on the price of integrity. What is it? And how do you also make sure that you're holding on and you're drawing your line on the sand when you feel somebody is threatening, of course, your area of conviction and what you really hold dear as well. Peter, you've got 5 minutes, beginning now.
Thank you, Debarl, and thank you, Kenyans, for watching NTVM Live this morning. Allow me to just go straight to this point about the price of integrity. And I'd like to say that the first price for those men and women who decide to pursue and exercise integrity is pain. And I'm talking about real pain, not the pain that people say it's like I feel this, but it is real pain. There's chastisement, whereby because of the fallen nature of man, it's like today if you chose to pursue integrity, you are the exception rather than the rule. It's like, what's wrong with this person? And that is the reason why in even organizations and institutions that we have, like the EACC, that is where we have had the highest turnover of the CEOs and even the chairpersons, because it's like we didn't take you there. And even the vetting process, because we talk of Chapter 6, and allow me to say this to Kenyans, that it's really not the what. It's like everyone knows the what. It is the how. If you've gone to some of these vetting exercises on the Chapter 6, you'll be surprised at the things they look for. And even the fact of taking this nominee to Parliament for approval, the same Parliament which, and I beg to be corrected, we had a recent issue about the sugar and everything. And this was something so vital because every Kenyan takes sugar. Then another body says this and that thing is now lost. Kenyans are forgotten, and we don't know who got sick as a result of that. And when it came to the revelation that 10,000 was dished out, then you ask, was 10,000 really the price of the health of Kenyans? We had the tobacco bill a while back. And when it was going on, we had MPs who were taken to Mombasa by the manufacturers. And it ended to today. There was a time you couldn't smoke in this city. But walk around, people are going around smoking. Why? Because somebody who was supposed to be the custodian of that integrity was actually boxed in. So for me, I think we should not even be talking about Chapter 6. We should be asking the how. And the how is that... at the point at which, and I began by saying earlier on, that integrity is about justice. It's about authenticity. It's about self-sacrifice. It's about truth. It's about boldness and courage. And because of the price that is paid when a man or woman takes that route, the former Chief Justice, Willie Mutunga, once said, if you have really to fight corruption, you must be willing to pay with your life. So someone is asking, okay, should I die? I leave my wife and my children or my husband, then I think there is a problem. And this it's a real human problem. I remember our Lord Jesus Christ. He knew that he was going to die on the cross. But as Gethsemane, he actually prays until sweat of blood comes from him. And he's telling God this, God, if it is your will, let this cup pass. But not as I will, but as you will. So it is like it's not... I would even rather say my business would be to ask, how do we get to this place? Because we all know what is supposed to be done. And that's why I started when I sat there, I said that I believe strongly that we need some divine intervention. And divine intervention is not even country. It's about coming to realize that we need this to be done. When Daniel, Shadrach, and Abednego, when they went to Babylon and they were told this is what you need to do, it was integrity that made them say no. But there was also a danger, because should the king have been told that these three young men have refused, then they would have lost their lives. But the question is, how far are we willing to go? And that's why I'm saying that price of chastisement, pain, rejection, scolding, loss of life. The reason why we had this exam issue is because C+ goes to the university. In those who are familiar in the field of education, there's something called a standard deviation curve, whereby at a certain level, some people will go down, whether they were, so if people steal and they have the A's and the B's and you don't steal, then you don't go to university and you are considered you are not right. So that's why I'm saying it is these things that we need a serious discussion and even calling the people to assist us, the religious people, to tell us how do we begin to build that conscience, because integrity on paper in the Constitution will never save this country. I think we need something more, pleading to God, that God help us to be what you really want us to be. Thank you, Kenyans.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edward Nzinga there. He asked, it's not, or he says it's not the what, but it's the how, right? And integrity on paper will not help this country at all. Let's can see also reactions on Twitter from you as well. We have Abdallah Madambo saying, no matter how nice the promise of temptation, the price of integrity is always nobler. And we have also Benjamin here saying, Benjamin Kimbwereza Magonda, correct, I concur with you, madam. Even the issue of having a referendum won't add value if we still have a corrupt mindset, especially leadership of the day. We have to deliberately choose to change and shun away from impunity. He's tuned in from Magongo, Mombasa. Thank you for watching AM Live this morning. Also, we have the economist Joe saying he's absolutely right. The Integrity Center itself is a hotbed of corruption. As Kenyans are busy protecting leaders who have killed and looted public coffers. We have also Benedict Siano saying we have a lot of key issues that govern integrity, and with hopeless leadership in our country, it's hard to develop integrity. Integrity should be exercised from the top in a descending sequence. And also we have Wanjiku Mugane saying, how do we bring our leaders to book if we cannot trust our judicial systems and voting systems? And of course, this issue of integrity, of course, runs the whole gamut as well. So it is on the continuum of every facet of our institution as well. We have Felixia's attorney saying, anybody held responsible for going against integrity must face the consequences. Let's learn from good leaders. Also, we have John Githanga says, yes, our country is jinxed to an extent whereby even the hitherto highly revered church pastors have been stinging their own faithfuls to acquire wealth, fame and grandiosity. We need to seriously return to God. I don't foresee any other way. Also, we have Kennedy Omogi saying bad habits kill good morals. We have bad habits and bad morals, right? As Kenyans, he thinks we have bad habits and bad morals. Remember that particular book by Sandra Bindra as well, Peculiar Habits of Kenyans. And those are some of your reactions on Twitter, which I shall be sampling more of this. But we want to buckle down with the discussion also, with our panelists as well. We had from Samuel Hochi also, beginning with that particular presentation. And he says we critically need to examine ourselves and make certain demands. What demands do we need to make as Kenyans? Are we having that collective angst as a nation when we see all these things, our security being compromised from measly 2,000 shillings? Al-Shabaab militants will be let through the country, in and out, because the police are being compromised.
Kenya is a contemporary democracy, and the reason why I said we need to have a serious reflection from the family setting going upwards is that it more and more appears that deep inside, there was a survey conducted, I think, last year, which revealed over 70% of our youth would engage in corruption if offered the opportunity. That already tells you there's a big problem, to the extent that maybe the people who complain about lack of integrity are only complaining because they don't have that opportunity. And as a lawyer, I would say that the Constitution and the various legal provisions and frameworks established must work. We have to demonstrate as a nation that whatever we aspired to do, we have attempted to implement. It is true that the vetting process of persons either ascending to state office or public office is a compromised process. It's a mockery. We have to call it what it is. And it's for obvious reasons. We have extreme patronage. We have extreme nepotism. And as such, when it becomes to the question of appointment to public office, you see political rewarding as opposed to meritocracy. And that again then fuels this whole integrity question, because then you have individuals who have ascended to public office or state office on totally different agendas. Either agendas to serve their masters, those who got them there in the first place, and not the public. And that in itself then impacts on all sectors of society. When we talk about lack of effective adjudicatory mechanisms in Kenya, that impacts on the ease of doing business. That impacts on the destination of Kenya as a viable destination to make investments. If you get bogged down in litigation that will run into many years, no investor will come into Kenya. And we should look at implementing the constitutional spirit in a way that it addresses not today but the long term. What are we leaving our children and their children? The opportunities some of us have gotten in our lifetime, do we think these are opportunities that will be easily obtained by our children and their children in a fair environment? Not an environment where there is patronage, where there is nepotism, where people can compete and let the best emerge.
All right. I like the aspect of implementing the spirit of a constitution, because we normally talk about the letter and not really the spirit. And this is what also Dr. Edward Nzinga is alluding to here, that we don't need integrity on paper. We need to, the implementation now, that is where the nub is, that is where the crux of the matter is. I don't know what you will think on this as well. Are we doing enough as institutions? We have the commission on implementation of the constitution. You know, in Parliament there was also that particular oversight commission that overran its time, and we still are grappling with the spirit of the constitution. But when we talk about the spirit of the constitution, what do we really mean? They say the letter and the spirit, right? The spirit is somewhat amorphous. Do we have any of course any sort of framework that we can say this is the spirit of the constitution? What is the spirit of the constitution?
Can I just suggest, when you talk of the spirit, you say it's amorphous. But many years ago, over 2,500 years ago, the Greek philosophers were grappling with this question. They were asking the question, what is a good life? What is good and what is bad? And they came up with a study of virtue, the concept of virtue. And we all know what virtue is. Virtue is what is good, right? And they were struggling with this. And I was looking for the definition of virtue, and it talks about a sort of a spirit amorphous issue, but it is defined as the qualities of the mind, the will, and the heart that instill strength of character and stability of personality. I like that definition, because we're talking about qualities of the mind, the will, and the heart. So these are personal to individuals. I think one thing that is lacking in this country is an education on the concepts of what is good, an education on virtue. It is missing. But that education should start in the first school that we all go through, which is the family. You understand? Because children are taught by their parents what is good. It is good to be kind to others. It is good to be generous. It is good to be honest. You learn that right from the first school. And then that is reinforced in the second school, which is the primary school. It is reinforced at the university, and it is reinforced in society, especially by public role models who are in leadership positions. Now, that is lacking. And the breakdown has started in the family, because we are now finding parents who are willing to pay money to get their children examination papers. Now, what are we teaching those children? So the spirit is lacking in the parents, and the spirit is now lacking in the children. So we don't have the qualities of the mind, the will, and the heart that will instill strength of character and stability of personality, because there is no one teaching this. So we need to start thinking about this and have that conversation as Kenyans. It's a waste of time to have the best constitution in the world on paper, and then to have a referendum to amend that constitution and spend billions of shillings. It's a waste of time if we don't come back to our personal values, if we don't come back to our personal practice of virtue and start thinking about that. That is the conversation we should be having. And that is where we should spend our money, not on pieces of paper which we shall leave on the shelf and praise them as the best in the world. It's a waste of time.
Waste of time. Yeah. And of course, we'll always pick up the Constitution when now we are nearing the general election. Absolutely. And now we can now talk about the Leadership and Integrity Act and try maybe and bring the tenets of actually that particular chapter to bear when it comes to our leaders. But this is something that we should be living every day. Integrity is not on paper. This is what you say, Dr. Edward. Tell us more.
Well, thank you so much, Debarl, and my dear colleagues and Kenyans for this opportunity to have to share this with you. Now, allow me to start from what is currently happening in our country about the Michuki rules. When these things started, I've heard many people there say, this is a way of creating an opportunity for the police to get money. That's what they are saying. And then I asked myself, how is this creating an opportunity? And at one point I thought to myself, I said, possibly there is a point in this sense. When the government has stayed with these rules for 15 years, and somewhere down the line they wake up one day and say we are implementing this, and then they target all categories of vehicles, then they actually create some room, because in Maslow's hierarchy of human wants, we have physiological needs as the first level. If a man or a woman is able to take care of that, then they go to safety needs at the second level. Then the third need is love and belongingness. That's the third level. Yes. The fourth is what we call self-esteem needs, and the final is self-actualization. Yes. So when now we crack down on the buses, on the matatus and the Nissans, then it's like we close all doors. And I had even suggested to a friend, I said, if I were the government, I would have chosen by starting with the Nissans, so that when we are hard on them, we know the buses are doing business, and the Kenyans will not be tempted even to break, because there is an alternative. And what happened later, whereby people would pay 300 shillings around the city, it's also lack of integrity. And it is like when I talked about loss, it's about when people decide to go the integrity. I want to thank Dr. Matiang'i, the way he approaches issues. I think what he requires is just some little wisdom, such that the strategy now, so that when I do this, I'm able to handle it this way, so that I don't also create a loophole. Actually, the easiest way, and people have said this, in Pan-Africa we teach leadership. We are actually leadership university, and we actually say that sometimes if a change has to come, the easiest way to create is to create a crisis, and that crisis should be positive, not negative. But now we create negative crisis. That's why when we had a problem with unga, maize flour, that has been the staple food in this country. It shot up to 150, 200 shillings per bag because somebody created a crisis. So in the process of these crises that we are creating, I think we need to move, and I need to give an antidote. I think if we combined law, fidelity to the law, and fidelity to the law means we refine some of these penalties so that we make them unbearable to the ordinary person. Because the reason why people break laws is that sometimes they have at the back of their mind the possibility of getting away with it. That's why the more senior person is in the society, they'll do something foolish, and it's like you're asking, is this person in their right mind? But they know at the back of their mind there is a way out. Another person knows it is the end of my world. And that one, if we refine those laws and made them so punitive, then people will begin to ask, how do we go about this? And the second combination is what my brother here, Dr. Ari, has talked about, having some training. Of course, we say governors, other people should have a degree, but what degree? Which is this degree, university degree, that is required in certain areas of leadership? Because if we don't see that, someone can be sincerely wrong. There are people who do things not because their worldview has been shaped in a different way, and they really don't understand the realities that we are dealing with. And the third, which is more strong and which I'll still emphasize, is willingness to submit to God. As the Bible character I like most is Jonah. Jonah did many mistakes, but the good thing he said, look guys, if this ship is going to sink because of me, please throw me into the ocean. And I think if we could get to that level whereby I say, if this NTV cannot move because of Dr. Edward Nzinga, please throw me into the sea and you guys proceed. I think it's what we need. And that does not come just naturally. It comes when a man or woman begins to accept that they were created by a superior who is God, and they allow. Billy Graham, if his allegiance was not to God, I can say here that he would not have survived. It's like Billy Graham would look at things. I have never seen him in life. I read about him, but I knew his higher order was he would look at things and say, if God, the one I'll go to after this life, if the God who has kept me, that's the higher order. But when we talk about punishment and whatever, so if we combine godliness, we combine the law and the training, education, civic education, I'm sure as Kenyans will go far.
All right. Let's see from to Foster, the principle of clock building and not time telling, according Jim Collins there. I think also it has piqued a lot of interest with some of Twitter artists here. Maybe you want to expand more on that, what you actually told us on the lectern there.
Okay. The principle of clock building and not time telling means that an individual or a society thinks about not only today, but also thinks about the future, even when the future we are not there. So that, because right now, we are the total sum of all the decisions and experiences we have had in the past. That is what we are today. Therefore, we have to think, so in the future, I have to think about it in terms of the future. What kind of future am I building? So when I think about what kind of future am I building, I begin to say, because the future is made up of what I do today, tomorrow, and the day after, I must be careful of the little and the big decisions I make along the way, so that when the future is here, I will look back like Billy Graham and say, I have run a good race. That is the principle of of clock building. Time telling is where we want to make a quick decision for now and for the benefit of now, irrespective of what happens to anyone, and in the future, I don't care, even to own my own self. And that's the principle. Let's think about it as a nation. Let's look at education. The reason why we are where we are in the education sector, and my colleagues have alluded to it as well, is because we went back in education. The thing was for now. So even the way teachers have been teaching, it is for now. The way lecturers have been, some lecturers have been teaching, it is for now. Exams have been taken for now. So that I now think about now, the exam I'm doing now. I don't think about who am I, what am I becoming, and what are we collectively becoming in the future. The health sector, the same. The sugar crisis. The person who has imported mercury sugar is because they wanted to make a lot of money now. But they were not thinking, how is it going to affect me and us in the future? The principle, therefore, is that we must think about today, but also tomorrow. But let me also refer a little bit to what we talked about, wholeness.
Yes.
When we make decisions for now, we then don't think about the total picture of who we are, because none of us exists as an island. Any decision I make about myself today has an impact on somebody else today or tomorrow. Therefore, when I'm importing sugar and I know it has mercury, for example, or when I have done something and the TB test kits have disappeared, I may be thinking that it's helping me now to live large and, like one viewer said, grandiose now. But I'm forgetting that I will pay the price myself, somebody else, my children, my neighbor, my family, and therefore our total society, all of us together, will still pay the price of not ensuring that our sugar was good for human consumption, our meats were good for human consumption, that we can travel in safety and not fear that somebody will overlap or there will be all this commotion on the road. We will still pay the price anyway. Therefore, we should adopt the principle of clock building. Clock building. Because we will still pay the price anyway.
And of course, even maybe writing on that particular sentiment as well, Billy Graham, I read his autobiography, he puts, some of the tenets, maybe that will act as a clock building. that yes, on matters of morality, because in light of what we have with the hashtag #MeToo, we have women hacking back to so many years, even when guys were still very young, as the case was in the US, when of course someone was actually trying to get the judicial seat. And we had the story of Billy Graham saying, this is the mechanism I'm going to set up for myself to keep my life pure when it comes to the opposite sex, that even when I'm giving pastoral counseling and advice, that will be within the confines of an office that is an open office that has, it is a glass walled. So it is not really out of the public. People can see there's transparency. That is a segment of, what you're talking about, clock building, and not just thinking about time telling right now. You're seeing the future, that this thing will haunt me. And we have so many also able people who were of character. But now, hacking back, we have stories also of moral failure as well. But let's come back to also Sam and ask you this particular question. If we may hack back to the history of Kenya, who is that one person you'll pick and say, this is a price that he paid for integrity? That is so, okay, I'm going to compromise my character because of corruption, of tribalism, and I'm going to resign. Is there a person that can actually, who comes quickly to your mind and say, this is a person who stood for integrity? He paid the price for integrity.
I think I've had the opportunity of meeting the late Bildad Kagia.
Bildad Kagia.
Bildad Kagia did pay a price for disagreeing with the late President Jomo Kenyatta on some of the policies around distribution of land soon after independence. And in fact, he was abused of being a stupid person who does not want to create some wealth for himself and his family. Bildad Kagia had argued that distribution of land should be equitably conducted and preference should be given on the freedom fighters who had gone to the bush and lost everything. And he paid the ultimate price by remaining in abject poverty for his entire life. So to me, I think he did not resign, but he disagreed with what was happening at that particular juncture, having been one of the Kapenguria Six.
Right. Cesar Mwangi, you remember of anyone else apart from Bildad Kagia?
Yes. Debarl, I think the biggest example for me was Wangari Maathai. Wangari Maathai stood out here in Huru Park when the draconian Kanu regime wanted to put up a 60-story structure for the headquarters in a public space, the only green space in the city center. They wanted to take it up and put up their building. And I can tell you, she stood there and other people stood with her and they paid the heavy price. They were bullied, they were beaten, they were arrested, they were harassed, but they stood. Today, as we speak, there is green grass in that space, which could have been a concrete jungle. We go to Karura Forest. Karura Forest, as we speak today, would have been allocated to private individuals who are well connected to the government of the day. Yes. And they would have flipped those plots, sold them to developers, made huge amounts of money, and Karura Forest today would not exist. If it was not for Wangari Maathai and what she stood for. At a heavy price. She eventually got a Nobel Prize. She was recognized for her work. But she paid a very heavy personal price. And integrity requires sacrifice. Not only in this country, we can look all over the world. The people who have really stood for something have paid the price. But also in this country, I know many people in the private sector who have lost their jobs simply because they refuse to play ball with procurement deals. Yes. I know them. With financial transactions, which they refuse to participate in crooked transactions, which are always taking place under the table deals, and there are individuals who have refused. I cannot even name them here, but I know many of them, and I respect them highly. And I hope we will find a way of one day recognizing these people and giving them what is rightfully theirs. This country is losing a lot of manpower from good people who are being kicked out of organizations because they are men and women of integrity. We're losing a lot. And some of them are even migrating out of the country. It's a big tragedy.
It's a big tragedy. Right, let's just also get to hear what people are saying. Major Jones Obiero is saying, good debate on the price of integrity. Quoting Principal Kwaka, there is nothing wrong in doing the right thing. Also, Governor The Dreamer is saying, goodness is about character, integrity, honesty, kindness, generosity, moral courage, and the like. More than anything else, it's about how we treat other people Also, Lister Baraza says integrity starts at a personal level. My policy has always been do the right thing at the right time, at the right place, even when no one is watching. Right, good principle there. Joram saying price is what you pay, value is what you get. This is quoting Warren Buffett. Integrity starts from the top, which determines the values to be followed. Stop blaming the junior cop, blame the entire value system. Also, Holmes, as a Kenyan, a public audit of all arms of government is all the proof you need to prosecute lack of integrity with a sure conviction. To me, Kenya requires divine intervention. Also, Nelson Mugo says, I feel vindicated. I've always wondered how these terrorists get in so easily despite our heavy police presence along the borders. And this is also just looking at what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Bribe police let in Shabab bombers. We have Mheshimiwa Hypeman Tunjendi Neto saying the constitution is the most important guiding factor in any land. For instance, leadership and integrity, protection of individuals' rights and so on. This started from the olden days in the Bible where we had the 10 commandments. And John Gidanga saying, talk is cheap. We have many educated, eloquent, but hypocritical speakers who come up with beautiful speeches, policy papers, and blueprints, but do very little to implement what they say. Action speaks louder than words. Let's hear from Dr. Edward Nzinga. You say that it's not the what, it's the how. What do you mean?
Thank you so much, Debarl and colleagues and Kenyans. Why I say it's not the what, saying that it is the how because the what is in the public domain. It's like all of us know what we require to do. And I'm saying this because if today, maybe I'm talking about the EACC, I wished that part of its mandate was to sit down and come up with strategies on how to instill values in Kenyans and how to go to that extent whereby a person will be guided and just like the way we do counseling. You know, counseling is whereby it's like you've met a person, because in Pan-Africa Christian University we are also strong in counseling, whereby this person is helpless. It's like they've reached their brim. It's like they can't get it anymore. Then you begin to guide the person, and the person becomes something. So I think these are some of the strategies EACC, because that's the body that is in charge of ethics and integrity. It could help us all, because I want to submit, when it comes to matters of integrity, this is the only school where we don't have teachers, where we are all students, because it's a process. It's a process, and everyone, and I'm taken aback. You know, one day Jesus is brought a woman who was caught in adultery, and he said, if you have nothing, pick the first stone and cast it. And nobody did. And Jesus, as God knew, nobody shall. So I think as Kenyans we need help, all of us, and we need to find out, sit down, and I still go back to EACC. We ask ourselves, what can we do? What strategies exist so that we all come together to find out the strategy? And I think with divine help, we can get somewhere. That's my thinking.
All right. Let's hear from Trufosa, even as we are winding up. When it comes to examples, who would you easily pick as well?
Wangari Maathai is one of my favorites, but,
yes.
But let me also speak about Bishop Muge.
Yes, Bishop Muge.
Bishop Muge.
Yes.
Bishop Muge for me is a very good example, because he is a religious leader. He was a religious leader, bishop of the church, and yet he was willing to speak to the government of the day against injustices, and he paid the ultimate price with his life. We know he was threatened, but he still dared to go. If you remember, he was dared and told, if you go here, you will not live alive. But he went. Why? He knew he was speaking the truth. He was speaking for the masses, and yet he looked and was willing to pay the price. And the freedoms we enjoy today are because of the men like Bishop Muge, who used the platform that they had been given with what they had been given and spoke for the whole of society. So for me, he really stands out as a leader who was given a platform, and he used it not for his personal good alone, but he looked at our whole society and spoke for it. He looked at the injustices and spoke against them. He took the courage to speak to the government of the day and speak against the things that were ailing our society. So he called a spade, and he never backed down. He was not cowed. And so for me, I think it is for those leaders who have those opportunities to speak and stand for that which is right and just, not only for themselves at a personal level, but for the whole organization. So Bishop Muge.
All right. Let's come back to you as we are winding up, Sam. You say that we have failed ourselves and we need to hold our leaders accountable. Do you think we're not really holding our leaders accountable?
No.
And how have we failed ourselves?
No. Just to pick the recent development where there is a crackdown. They're talking about a national crackdown on public service vehicles, which has now been extended to private vehicles. These laws exist. These laws are supposed to be implemented on a daily basis. On a daily basis. The agencies concerned are not supposed to be waking up after a cycle of silence and going to slumber to implement the law. Same applies with the standards that we have set on ourselves. So that when I am stopping at a roundabout and there is an ongoing national crackdown on traffic, and you still see motorbikes disregarding traffic rules in the presence of police officers, it's a mockery. It's lack of integrity even for those officers. It's lack of integrity for people who have gone to driving schools to continue displaying either ignorance or impunity on the roads in the presence of the police. So I highly doubt what we are doing as a nation. So same principle applies to the law. Let's implement what we have. Let's look at it. Are the penalties, for example, punitive enough? Yeah? If they are not, let's have a candid national conversation. Let's mix it up with spirituality. Let's concentrate on our children. Maybe our minds are too corrupted to change. Let's invest in the children.
In the children.
Yeah, thank you.
So maybe it will trickle down to spiritual formation, where we have the church, the laity, just a matter of spirit, the mosques as well, and the temples, because Kenya is a diverse nation when it comes to religion as well. Briefly, as we're winding up.
Debarl, very briefly, let us, if we're to go to the basics, the first school is the family. If we can strengthen the family, a man and a woman come together, they have children, they love one another, and they teach those children very well, we will solve most of the problems of this country. That is basic. But if we start looking now for the government or the church or somebody else, those are other human beings, many of whom are very corrupt.
Yes.
But if we start with ourselves, that we have a responsibility with those we bring into this world, and we shall try to stay together and love one another for the sake of these children, and then try and educate these children, then we shall make some progress. But once we start failing at that very core of society, that first building block, when we fail there, it is very difficult to correct the problems later on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Edward, also your closing remarks.
Yes, the Apostle Paul talks about the body being at war with the spirit. And I would want to end by saying, even as we pursue legislation, as we pursue other avenues, still let's look up to the spirit of the Almighty God, to help us, so that when the body fights with the spirit, it's like our deep inner self is saying, we support what the spirit is saying, so help me God. And that is what I think Kenyans we all need if we have to be on the verge of making it to integrity.
Thank you. But that's riding on the assumption that everyone is godly in this country or espouses to a higher being. People will debate even on social media and say, hey, why are you riding or assuming like everyone believes in God? Okay, let's hear from Truforce as well.
For me, it's to challenge leaders to build the clock rather than to tell the time. And that at the end of your leadership, and let me borrow some words here, perhaps it would be good for leaders to ask, have I taken anybody's cow or anybody's donkey? Have I cheated or oppressed anyone? Have I accepted a bribe from anyone? If I have done these things, I will pay back. It is time for leaders to build the clock.
Right, time for leaders to build the clock. I really want to thank our panelists this morning, Sam Hochi, who is the Executive Director of International Commission of Jurists, Also want to thank Dr. Cesar Mwangi, who is the Executive Director of Center for Personal Leadership. Also want to thank Dr. Edward Nzinga, who is a Senior Lecturer and Director, Valley Road Campus, Pan-African Christian University. Also, we want to thank Tofosa Kwakasuma, who is the Principal of St. Paul's University and Nairobi campus. We thank you so much for your valued company. And for me also, I picked up this book by Karen Rothmeyer. It's all about Joseph Murumbi, and it's called Joseph Murumbi, A Legacy of Integrity. Let me just turn it on the other side so that I can just read what the synopsis is saying as we're winding up. In 1966, after serving first as Kenya's foreign minister and then as vice president, Joseph Murumbi resigned from government, having concluded that the country had made a wrong turn away from a concern for the poor and the ideals he believed in. Murumbi told an old friend that he could no longer be part of corruption in this country. Tribalism too, which was to take Kenya to the brink of disaster years later, had already become firmly entrenched, and he wanted no part of it. Today, Murumbi stands as a symbol of what Kenya could have become and still could be. As the son of Goan father and Maasai mother, he disdained prejudice of any kind. As some plucked from relative obscurity by Jomo Kenyatta, thanks to his hard work and talents as an organizer, he was dismissed of those who depended on and preserving on family and ethnic connections. And as a strong advocate of embracing and preserving African culture, he was a champion of African artists and their works. This book, which combines interviews done with Murumbi in the 1970s with historical information and recollection of people who knew him, is Murumbi's story. A man of integrity, a legacy of integrity. He's a person who didn't want to take part in all this malfeasance and corruption and tribalism in this country. That is a true leader, Joseph Murumbi, who was the Vice President of Kenya. Thank you very much for your valued company. You've been watching the Leadership Forum. Living with us is up next.